Hi, and welcome back to Conversations with Chrissy. I'm Chrissy Nizer, Motor Vehicle Administrator. I'm really glad to have you back and joining us today. Today, we're excited to be talking about mobile driver's licenses, and Maryland has been leading the way amongst jurisdictions by implementing in the Apple Wallet, Samsung Wallet, and Google Wallet as an option for our customers to manage your identity in a secure way. And today we're really excited to have with us the president and CEO of the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators, an association near and dear to my heart, Ian Grossman. Thanks for joining us, Ian.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And you were just saying, Ian is the host of a podcast I listen to all the time, AMVAcast. Yes. I encourage our listeners to check that out as well. But first time being on the other side of the mic, so to speak.
It is. I've been hosting our own podcast now coming up on almost 5 years because we started during the pandemic. But ironically, even though we put out an episode every week, I've never been a guest on a podcast. And I think it's I'll find out which one is easier or harder to do, answering or asking the questions. And what's also might be interesting for your watchers and listeners to know is you still hold the record as the most appearances on our AMVAcast. So I'm pleased to be a guest on yours.
Well, thank you so much. And yeah, I love listening to it. Great topics in terms of highway safety and motor vehicle evolution. We certainly always try to be in Maryland on that cutting edge of things and bring the best for our customers. So great to have you here. Maybe we just start there and talk a little bit about your history, how you came to be at AMVA, and a little bit more about the association because our listeners might not know.
Yeah, AMVA, American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators. We are the trade association representing the interests of the motor vehicle agencies and highway safety law enforcement in all North America. In plain speak, that's the DMVs and the state police in the U.S. and Canada, all the states and territories in the U.S., all the provinces and territories in Canada. And what we do for them is really twofold. One is we serve as their association, as any set of professionals would have an association for training and networking and developing best practice and standards and guidelines, which I think will be particularly relevant to our MDL conversation today. AMVA is also a unique nonprofit association in that in the 90s, it built the technology computer infrastructure that connects all of the U.S. states to each other and to the federal government. So every day when someone's going into a DMV in the United States in there, whether it's a driver license transaction or a vehicle title transaction, the ability for DMVs in the U.S. to do those business processes is running on the back end, our network that connects them to each other. And that's unique for a nonprofit association to provide that technology bureau service. For me personally, I'm finishing now my first year as CEO. However, it's my 16th year with the organization. Came to AMVA about 15 years ago in a different role that's changed over time. And that followed a career in transportation policy, both at the federal level at U.S. Department of Transportation and also at the state level, not in Maryland, even though I'm a very proud Maryland resident now. I worked for some time with the State Agency of Transportation in Vermont and worked for the governor up there on a number of different policy issues over the years.
Well, that's wonderful. So I think our listeners might be interested because I know I get this question a lot. DMV, MVA, all these different acronyms.
That's true.
I've found out so much about our various jurisdictions and the fact that they're just organized differently. Here in Maryland, we've got a coordinated department where we've got driver services, vehicle services, highway safety, vehicle emissions, but not like that in other states. I wonder if you can talk about that.
Sure.
And the important role of the association of bringing those entities together and sometimes making connections where they might not exist.
Absolutely. And so when you look at across the U.S. and Canada, there are 69 sovereign governments, states, provinces, territories. And you're absolutely right. Within those states and territories, they're organized differently. I would say the majority is similar to Maryland, where you have one government agency that does your driver's licensing, vehicle registration, and titling services in one bureau, so to speak. But that's not true everywhere. Some states, the agency that does driver's licensing is part of the law enforcement agency. So maybe the state police and the driver's licensing agency are together. And the vehicle might be part of a tax or revenue agency that's separate. There are some states, unlike in Maryland, where you go to a state-run branch to get your work done. There are some states where the state agency sets the policy and oversight, but it's actually the county government authorities that deliver the service to the customers. There are some states where there are an agency for everything. One agency does driver's licensing, one agency does vehicle, one does law enforcement. What's exciting for AMVA is we're agnostic to that. If you're doing those services, you're part of our community. But because it is different from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, what we pride ourselves on is providing that platform for you all to connect to each other, so that you, as the senior executive of the Maryland MVA, have a place to go to meet who does my job in Virginia, Colorado, California, Quebec, and then even beyond all around the world, even though they're not part of our organization, being that linchpin to bring the community together.
No, that's great. And I'm sure listeners might not be surprised, especially in this region. We talk an awful lot with our colleagues in Virginia and DC because we cross jurisdictions all the time. And we always say that in the motor vehicle world, right? The interoperability is key because we need to use that license and that registration and tag wherever we go.
It's funny you say that about the DC, Maryland, and Virginia, because you mentioned in Maryland, it's an MVA. In Virginia, it's a DMV. Washington, DC, it's a DMV. And people, I think, are familiar with those acronyms. But I remember driving in the car a little over a decade ago, and the first time a radio host used the phrase DMV, not related to motor vehicles, but to DC, Maryland, and Virginia. I said, oh, they're co-opting our brand, but it makes sense because the DC area, as you say, particularly moving across Maryland, DC, and Virginia, there is such constant crossing of jurisdiction borders.
Definitely acronym confusion we have all the time. So it's a great pivot to talk about technology and the critical role that AMVA plays in that, mobile driver's licenses. And as I said earlier, having that license, being able to cross jurisdictional borders, not only in the US and Canada, but also thinking internationally. Wondering if you can talk a little bit about why that's so important and how AMVA plays a similar role in terms of the mobile driver's license that you do with a physical license.
Absolutely. The important thing to remember is that when we talk about a mobile driver's license and what it is and why it is it's because it's new technology that gives us an opportunity to fix the loopholes of the physical world. And we could talk about what those are in terms of carrying your physical card and how we can now do better in terms of privacy, security, reliability. And AMVA has a strong background in creating the standards of the physical card. So those that are older and if maybe hold licenses for a longer period of time, remember a time if you compared your driver's license to someone else from another state or part of the world, they would look extremely different from one another. Different orientation, different colors, different information. And over the years, they've come to look more and more alike. They're not identical, but they're more alike today than they ever were before. And that's because AMVA members of motor vehicle agencies from throughout North America, got around the table and recognized this document, this piece of plastic in your wallet, is being used by all sorts of entities in the world to make sure you are you. And in fact, we know now that the driver's license is used for that more than proving to somebody you're legally allowed to operate a vehicle, right? Most time people are taking their license out of their purse or their wallet. It's to prove they are them, not to show they've been legally authorized to drive a car.
I often send that to their new employees. When was the last time you used your driver's license for its intended purpose?
Right.
And by that,
right. And, drive, and I hope it's not to show it off at third roadside, right? Yes, I'm allowed to drive this car. And so because of that, they said, let's make it more powerful to those that are relying on it. And so our members got together and wrote what we call the car design standard, which outlines just that. What colors should be used? How should it appear? What should it look like? And now, because of that standard, on the back of every card in North America, US and Canada, doesn't matter, has the same technology, which is the barcode. Anybody that's watching can pull out their license and say, oh yeah, there's this barcode on the back. And you can see it. It gets scanned everywhere. Anywhere you go, people are, whether it's a handhold machine or you're putting it under. When I go to my kid's school to visit, I have to scan my barcode to get my visitor badge. What's in that barcode, why it's that barcode, how it relates to the card is all laid out in the AMVA standard. And we did that so that your card can be used anywhere, interoperability. Right. So when mobile driver's license came along, we said, well, as we move into this new technology, even though there were early adopters, Maryland being one of the first, we said we need to learn the lessons of 50, 60 years of the physical world and say, let's not wake up in 15 years and all have done this new technology differently and we can't use it anywhere. So let's get together at the outset, create the standard so that when Maryland produces a mobile driver's license, it can be used in Arizona, in California, in Florida, and just the same, when Arizona is producing a mobile driver's license, they could just as easily come through BWI and use it as they could the Phoenix airport. So that was the start of AMVA's role in MDL, was just as it was in the physical world. How do we outline this standard so that we have interoperability and reciprocity?
Yeah, it's so important because the ability of our customers to be able to use that license wherever they want, whether it's in a physical form or that mobile form, is really critical. I wonder if we can talk a little bit, just as we begin to discuss this, what is a mobile driver's license and what is it not? Because I think there are misconceptions out there, and it's certainly an option for customers. Hopefully our Maryland customers have taken advantage and downloaded it in one of the wallets of their choice. But if not, maybe we could talk a little bit about what they can expect.
For sure. So first of all, I'm proud to say I have the Maryland MDL on my device, and I use it as often as I can, particularly right now at the TSA checkpoints, and looking forward to more opportunities as that expands. The mobile driver's license is a digital representation of the information on your driver's license. The first and probably most important thing for folks to understand is it is not a digital picture of your driver's license. It's not a PDF. It's not a photo that you then show somebody of it, but that it's data not dissimilar to the way you load a credit card onto a mobile device and you're able to tap it, and you're not showing someone a picture of your credit card, but you're actually exchanging the data in an encrypted manner. That is at its essence what the mobile driver's license is it takes that driver's license credential, puts it on your device, and allows you to transmit it in an encrypted way to someone else receiving that information, just the way somebody would tap a credit card or other information to the receiver.
And why would somebody choose? I mean, for us, we talk about identity management, personal information, protecting it. Talk a little bit about that and why so many jurisdictions, not just us, have really invested a lot of time and effort into making this available for our customers.
Absolutely. So obviously, customers are excited about it because of the convenience and the new technology. Again, the same reason why we're seeing this explosion in mobile payment methods. You could leave the physical wallet behind and have it all on your device. The opportunity as it relates to identity is, as I was referring to before, because it can be better than the physical world. What do I mean by that? Currently, if you have a physical license, every time you use it, you are giving that person all this information about you. And they may not need all that information about you. We go back to this idea that most of the time you're using it to prove you are you. Depending on how that person needs to prove you are you, they may need not to know your name, but just that you are you. They certainly don't need to know where you live. They don't need to know your eye color. They don't need to know whether you're an organ donor or not. All this information that gets handed over. The other great opportunity is when you use that, it's used, it's transmitted, and then it goes away. They're not keeping that information. Now compare that to one of the use cases I like to explain is when you go to a doctor's office. People walk into a doctor's office, they hand over their license, and what does the person at the desk do? They make a photocopy of it. Now all of a sudden, this doctor's office that, no accusations against doctor's offices, but file security is probably not their number one priority. And they've got all these photocopies of driver's licenses sitting in their files, as opposed to encrypted data that can only be used for its purpose. So you're allowed to control that based on where you're using it. I can decide what information do I want to give to you, when do I want to give it to you. So it's a better protection of my privacy as a holder of a driver's license. It's a more secure way to give it to you. And then lastly, I think another important piece is that when it's lost. If a license currently is lost or stolen, unlike a credit card where you can call and cancel the credit card, I can't call the MVA and cancel my license. Once someone else has it, they now have the keys to the kingdom to be me. As opposed to a mobile driver's license, say theoretically I lost my phone, then I can log on to my account and say, please pull that off of the phone. And it's no longer available for whoever has my phone. Not discounting the fact that even if that person has the phone, they have to somehow prove that they're connected to the phone using those biometric features of these devices. So again, it protects any misuse of a driver's license or identity card.
No, I love that control that it gives the individual, and not exchanging more information than you need for a
That's right.
transaction. So if you're doing age verification,
Hmm.
only knowing that the person meets that age criteria, not even their date of birth in
That's
that
right.
instance.
Yeah, I mean, age verification's a great one because when you think about young people that are going to, say, a club or to make a controlled purchase, if I'm a young person walking into a club needing to prove I'm 21, that bouncer does not need to know where I live.
Right.
They just need to know I'm allowed in.
That's exactly right. So we talked a little bit earlier about how DMVs are structured differently
Yeah.
and may have different processes. With MDL rollouts, I'm sure the same is true. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what you've seen throughout the country and how the standards provide the guideline to bring it all together.
So by following the standards, all of the agencies that are attempting to do an MDL can build their technology in a way where it can be used anywhere. But how it's delivered, how it's manifested is where we're seeing a lot of the experimentation. So we have a number of jurisdictions that are doing similar to what Maryland's done, which is partnering with existing wallet providers, Apple, Google, Samsung, etc., where you can work with them to load that onto their device. Other agencies have created their own app. So you have an app for the DMV of X state, and one of the things in the app is the manifestation of the mobile driver's license. And so they're finding different ways to get it into the hands of their users and to be able to deploy it in all those different ways.
That's great. So as long as they're using the standard, then that ability, that interoperability that we referenced earlier, it still happens. And AMBA has guidelines as well.
That's right, because how you show it, there's this opportunity to be innovative and try different things. But if you're following the standard, which really controls what data is in there, how do you secure the data, how do you encrypt the data, and how do you transmit the data, that's what allows everybody to use it everywhere they want. To draw a rough analogy to the physical card, there's a lot of flexibility on the front of the card. What colors do you want to use? How do you show your state name, etc.? But on the back, you have to make that 2D barcode exactly the same so that it can be scanned everywhere. And so figuring out where there has to be absolute consistency to have interoperability versus this flexibility to say I could take that consistent package, but deliver it in a different manner.
And it's wonderful that it's an international standard, because that means not only in the US and Canada, but maybe talk a little bit about the work that AMBA is doing with our European colleagues, Australian colleagues, so that frankly, when we're traveling all around the world, the vision is that you can use that MDL in an interoperable way.
Absolutely. That is the vision. And that's why we've been so active with the International Standards Organization, so that the standard is not just North American, but it's all over the world. And we see that development happening, particularly in Australia. Some of the Asian countries are also now starting to produce MDLs following the standard, and different parts of Europe are also experimenting with the standard. They are waiting on some additional clarity from the European Union, but the expectation is that with those directives from the European Union, they as well will be developing these devices and these credentials to meet the standard. Different parts of the world also differ because sometimes they do, unlike in the United States, they do have a separate identity credential from their legal authorization to drive.
It is interesting. Again, different deployments, but as long as we use those same standards, we'll be able to coexist and use it seamlessly. One of the newest developments that AMBA has launched is something called the Digital Trust Service. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that and how that, again, brings us all together.
Absolutely. So when we talk about being able to exchange this data in an encrypted, secure manner, when I approach somebody and want to use my mobile driver's license, for that person to be able to read it and accept that encrypted data, they need to have something called a public key, which is their decoder to read that information off of the device. And every agency that's issuing a mobile driver's license has to produce one of these keys to go along with it so that anybody can read it. In the early development, one of the first things we heard from all of those parties that eventually want to consume this, which we refer to as relying parties, they're relying on that information. So we talk about a TSA checkpoint or a liquor store or the bars or a doctor's office, banks, on and on and on. One of the things we heard from them is that when this scales and all the states and all the provinces are producing these, they will have a challenge going around and collecting all these different keys from a different place,
Sure.
let alone knowing that are they coded correctly? Do they match the standard that we've talked so much about?
Mm-hmm.
And so they said, what can we create in the middle so that we don't have to go all around, and that for you as a state, don't have to worry about getting your keys to all these places? And it goes back to in the beginning when I talked about AMVA's role in providing that technology network to states. AMVA's strength has always been in being a clearinghouse, being that middle hub to move information around. So it made natural sense for us to create what we refer to as a digital trust service, which is a home for these keys. And so what we do is, as states are rolling out a mobile driver's license, we'll come and visit with you, as we've done here in Maryland, and we'll do an audit of your MDL, of your process, and of your key to make sure it's secure, it's encrypted, it meets the standard. And when it does, we're able to load it on our digital trust service so that anybody who wants that key can come to this one place, not only have the convenience of a one place of downloading, but the confidence that we've done what I've just said, which is somebody has gone in, and now I, as a bank, can trust that this is a good, updated, legitimate key. I get that, I download it to my technology, and now when someone comes in from Maryland, because I have the Maryland key, I can read it.
Yeah, it makes it an easier exchange for everybody to have that secure place to do that handshake, right? Essentially, electronic handshake, that we all want to make sure that we're meeting their standards and that we're all communicating in a consistent way. So really exciting and great that AMVA took that role. I think it was natural because of the connection you already have with all the motor vehicle agencies.
Absolutely. And Maryland was the very first that was in the digital trust service, which is exciting. And now we are close to about a half a dozen, and we expect by the end of the year, it'll just continue to grow, kind of on that same pace of as states are rolling out MDLs.
So talk a little bit about that, right? We're still a bit in the infancy, maybe toddler stage with MDLs. Exciting to see more states joining DTS. What do you see as the next evolution of MDLs and how's it going to move forward?
So right now we see about a dozen jurisdictions that are offering ISO compliant solutions. Like all new technology, you get your group of those early adopters that lean into it and learn it. And then you get a third in the middle that are saying, okay, let me just see them work out what to do, and I'll come along. And then you'll get those that'll come at the end. What's exciting about MDL in our community is, for everybody we talk to, it's not an if, it's a when.
It's great.
People are not trying to be convinced. People understand the opportunity and the possibilities. It's just, as you can relate to running a complex organization, it has to fit into different project priorities for different agencies. And where are they in other projects, other technology projects, other outreach, and different demographics of their customers that might have a different level of demand for new technology. So we're at 12 now. We know that virtually all the others of the 69 are looking at it. It's just a matter of where they roll it out. I would say we will see a huge leap in the next 5 years. So here we are in 2024. This journey started in earnest in 2015, when some of the first states said we want to do this, and we really put the accelerator on the standard, even though the community had been talking about it as all these things for many years. So it took us nearly 10 years to get from let's start writing a standard to the first handful issuing. But I think it'll take half that time to really more than double the amount of agencies that are offering it.
No, that's great. And it is exciting to see some large jurisdictions. And in New York recently announced, California is obviously in the MDL space, along with Virginia to our south. So there's a lot of synergy, I think, that's happening from the state perspective. And to your point, I think jurisdictions see the value in it because we are so concerned about identity management and privacy. I think for relying partners, that's a new opportunity, because for them, you know, how they read the MDL, this is a whole new world to look at. And I know AMVA is doing a little bit to try to educate that community and reach out. You know, we say it's a chicken and egg. Do you have enough users to invest in the technology? But are users going to invest in it if the only opportunity is at the airport, which not everybody goes through all the
Sure,
time?
that's right. And we talked a lot about the benefit of the MDL for the person holding it. But one of the other biggest benefits for the relying party is to fight the increasing amount of fraud being perpetuated by counterfeit driver's license and identity cards. The ability to obtain a high quality counterfeit has gotten easier and easier. And so for a relying party, whether it is the TSA letting you on an airplane, a bank trying to close a large loan or mortgage, anybody that's relying on that, the ability to counterfeit and replicate a mobile driver's license is going to be extremely much harder than what we have in the physical world. So as a relying party, if I can invest in the ability to accept the MDL, then I can greatly reduce my fraud profile and the chance that I'll be a victim to somebody trying to commit fraud through a counterfeit driver's license. So we are out there talking to those industries that rely on the license to say, it's not just about new, cool, convenient technology. It's about this is an opportunity for you as a business to reduce the amount of fraud that is in the system. It's just a reality. So it's both protecting individuals for being subject to identity fraud and being a victim of identity fraud, and also to protect these businesses and organizations that rely on the credential of being a victim of somebody perpetrating fraud against them.
That's right. And like with any new technology, it takes time. But I think as we look back and even see the proliferation of the mobile wallets, it just wasn't something that people used as frequently as they do now. And so I think, as that comfortability is there, whether it's, the wallets that we're used to using with the private providers or a state wallet, I think as it evolves moving forward, both the relying parties as well as the customer will be more comfortable.
Yes. And as you talk about the chicken and the egg concept, if you remember with mobile payments, it was the same thing. We had the ability on our devices to pay long before the terminals could accept the ability for you to tap it. And what felt like a large gap, now we look back, we go, oh, it was just a few years. I see now they rolled it out to devices and the terminals had to catch up. You know me well enough, ever the optimistic. I think that's going to be the similar story where we're rolling out the ability to use it and the terminals, the readers will play catch up. The exciting opportunity, unlike with mobile payments where they had to install the hardware to read it. In this case, you only need the right software on another smart device.
That's right.
So just as I'm carrying my MDL on a smart device, if you are an organization that wants to read it, all you need to do is take your smartphone, download the right app that's connected to an organization that's pulled the keys from the DTS, and we're talking to each other from phone to phone. You don't have to invest in heavy, expensive infrastructure to be able to be in this ecosystem.
And that's a great preview for a conversation we're going to have in a future conversation with Chrissy about something we're doing in Maryland. So we're excited about a pilot that is doing that exact thing, using an app that our own IT wonderful staff built based on the standards to allow some businesses to read the MDL. So more to come on that. Stay tuned for more information there. Any other critical information that you think our listeners should know about MDLs or kind of breaking down that myth as we move forward in this space?
Not unlike all technology, it's a change in user behavior. And I think with the younger generations that are coming in and coming to your offices to get their licenses, I think that's some of where we'll see this big uptick. But I think it's also important for folks to know if they are carrying their physical license now, it's easy to go on, download what you need to do, and get your MDL sent to the phone. But the last thing I'll say about that is because we're in this time of transition, we can't leave our physical card home yet.
Thank you for that.
It's an AMVA recommendation. It's a requirement by most states that for right now, it's in addition to.
That's right.
Still have to have your physical card because of all these reasons we talked about of people not being able to read it, particularly law enforcement that's playing catch up. It's important to remember you still need to have your license or identity card on you, especially when you're driving. And even when you're trying to use it for identity, not everywhere is going to be able to consume your MDL. So still always keep that card in your wallet. And I think while we'll see this explosion in the next 5 years that I mentioned, it's going to be a long hybrid period. So while we'll soon be in a place where everybody can get an MDL, it's not going to be at the exclusivity of not having the physical. We're going to be in this dual world for some time until we can really get to a place where everybody only needs to have the digital version.
I think that's such an important point because you had referenced credit cards earlier.
Right.
Some people literally leave their credit cards at home because it is in that secure wallet, and that's exclusively how they use it, as most retailers now accept it. Not the same with the MDL,
That's
so
right.
really important distinction there.
Yeah.
And it's also exciting that there's other products that may be available electronically that we give out physically today in your wallet, so maybe even your registration card and other things that are physical today. And so another use of the technology for other purposes.
Absolutely. We're working on a project of similar nature that may be a future episode where we're looking at vehicle titles. Currently, vehicle titles is on a secure piece of paper. And not only are we saying, like everything else that's gone digital and everything you can do digital, why can't your vehicle title be digital? Why can't, when I sell my vehicle to somebody else or I'm buying a vehicle, I can't just transmit that title in a digital way? Why do I have to print it out and sign it and write down the odometer reading? Everything else has moved to a digital world. Why can't vehicle titles? And so we are looking at how to move that process. And what's exciting is we are leveraging a lot of this work of the mobile driver's license, because when you go back to what is the mobile driver's license, but a standard to say you have this information and how do you transmit an encrypted set of data, it's just a different set of data with vehicle titles. And so hopefully we'll learn those lessons. And even though we're on the earlier stages of that project, maybe it won't take as long to catch up.
It is exciting. And I know that's one transaction. They can be cumbersome, frankly, for customers. And so if you think about opportunities, not only to streamline, but also add that security component, which you don't frankly have with a physical title. Yes, we have the secure paper, but in terms of ensuring that the transaction continues from one purchaser to another, really critical from that ownership perspective, is probably the first or second most expensive thing that somebody owns.
That's right. I am glad, though, we started with the mobile driver's license and then moved to the title, because with a mobile driver's license, it's a relationship between you, the licensing agency, and me, the individual holder. Right. With a vehicle title, for those who don't know about that, there's a lot of fingers in that pot, right? You've got not only me as a vehicle owner, but who am I getting this title from? Is it just from the dealer, or is there someone that has a lien on this? Right. Is the vehicle, when I'm done with it, being sold to somebody else, or is it now going out to auction, or is it going to a salvage yard? So the types of people that have to move a title in that ecosystem is much more complicated than a one-to-one license relationship. But at the core of it, it can still be that same, how do we control this data and share it in a safe, encrypted, privacy-protecting manner? That's
great. Well, clearly another topic for another day, another podcast.
I won myself an invitation back.
There you go. And again, thank you so much for joining us. The association AMVA plays such a critical role in what we do every day, allowing us to securely process transactions and confirm identities, and grateful for you and all the staff at AMVA for the services that you provide us. And again, thank you for joining me for Conversations with Chrissy. Look forward to a future conversation where we talk more specifically about what we're doing in Maryland with mobile driver's licenses. Until then, be safe.